Welcome to The Debate. The current turmoil surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs has really reached a point of genuine institutional crisis. Our source material describes it as the team hitting a true rock bottom, and this comes after a series of just disastrous losses, all characterized by a pretty profound and observable lack of competitive effort.
Yeah, and what makes this so compelling for us to break down is the utter division among everyone analyzing the team. You have analysts, fans, former players, and they're all pointing fingers in different directions. Is the fault tactical? Is it organizational? Or is it purely down to the individuals on the ice?
And our central question today really emerges directly from that tension. Is this catastrophic failure? I mean, the sheer unacceptable absence of a competitive spirit. Is this fundamentally a systemic issue? I'm going to be arguing that yes, the primary fault rests with the systemic failure under the current coaching approach, which has really allowed the culture to decay.
And I'm going to argue that the evidence points overwhelmingly to something deeper. It points to a more unavoidable failure that's rooted in the player's own lack of execution and, frankly, individual accountability. I think this is a failure of personnel, suggesting that this highly compensated roster is the source of the problem. Irrespective of who's delivering the message from behind the bench.
Well, let's start with the mandate. The one established by Coach Craig Berube was, famously simple. His system, he said, only works if you compete. He explicitly signaled that this team's success was going to hinge on effort and commitment, not on some complex X's and O's. Yet the systemic failure is evident precisely because that cornerstone mandate is being ignored. And how do we know this is systemic? You just have to look at the results. The team was recently, and I'm quoting here, destroyed at every single facet of the game by the 32nd place Predators. This was immediately following a 4-0 shutout. This isn't just a bad tactical night. This is a failure of motivation. It's a collective refusal to meet the absolute minimum required standard. A failure to compel or motivate basic effort from a highly skilled veteran roster is, to me, a systemic flaw. It reflects a loss of the locker room standard, which has to be enforced by the staff. The profound lack of accountability we're seeing on the ice is a direct byproduct of the environment created by the current regime.
See, I come at this from a different angle entirely. The material for me highlights a failure of elite players to perform even basic duties. A failure so deep it really cuts across any specific coaching philosophy. The argument that the system is broken because players aren't competing, well, it sort of deflects responsibility from the core issue, which is professional negligence by the athletes themselves. I mean, just look at the data points that confirm this. The team's elite players aren't being elite. You've got Matthew Knies, a core piece of their future, with only 3 goals over his last 21 games. That's not a system failure, that's individual underperformance. And furthermore, the overall scoring production has dropped so dramatically that 2 low-profile players, Bobby McMahon and Nick Robertson, have essentially led the offensive production over the last dozen games, trailing only Austin Matthews. And crucially, consider the special teams.
Their power play unit, which features this vast array of high-salary talent, is hovering in the bottom 5 of the league. That unit relies on execution, on timing, on commitment to winning back pucks. It is a fundamental accountability issue when highly compensated professionals consistently fail to execute a simple zone entry or maintain their structure. The problem isn't that the coach's philosophy is complex. The problem is the 25-man roster is just not executing on the system.
Okay, we can agree that individual underperformance is present, but the coaching staff is specifically responsible for the consistency of effort. The core issue here isn't that one player is slumping. It's that the entire collective is capable of showing total urgency one night and then complete lethargy the next. If the system is as simple as just compete, then the coaching staff's primary function shifts, right? It moves from complex tactical deployment to ensuring peak emotional and mental readiness every single night. So when the team comes off a shutout loss and then produces an effort that poor against the league's worst team, it speaks to a fundamental flaw in environmental control. Berube's own post-game assessment, noting that third goal against the Predators was avoidable, suggests mental lapses. Lapses driven by a lack of focus, not a physical inability to perform. If the coach cannot foster the required focus when urgency is at its absolute peak, the system has failed the players.
I disagree with that premise, Stout, that a simple, effort-based system requires more coaching oversight on motivation. To me, it requires more professional pride from the players. When the mandate is boiled down to the simplest possible requirement, skate hard, compete, and the players collectively and willfully refuse to execute it, you are pointing the finger at the wrong source. You can't just continually replace the general behind the bench when the soldiers refuse to fight. And furthermore, relying on these sort of anecdotal mental errors ignores the empirical truth of execution failure. The power play issue isn't a mental lapse, it's structural failure, rooted in weak zone entries, a reliance on static perimeter passing, and a failure to shoot for rebounds. These players are paid millions to fix those technical deficiencies.
The lack of competition by this specific group demonstrates an inherent, deep-seated flaw in the mentality and professionalism of the players. It suggests they are the source of the persistent instability, not just victims of a poor system.
But if the systemic culture is so broken that players are exhibiting what you call professional negligence, then that very state of affairs is the failure of the institution that manages and enforces accountability. The coach is the enforcer. And just think about the psychological impact here. The repeated coaching changes. Berube is just the latest voice. If his simple competition message is already generating what you might call messaging fatigue within a year, it indicates the problem resides in the organizational instability itself and the lack of a long-term commitment to a standard. The players have learned they can just wait out the voice. That cyclical nature of failure is the systemic flaw.
That's a compelling line of argument, but I question the validity of focusing on the coach when the institutional decay seems to be perpetuated by player-level leadership. Have you considered the implication of Austin Matthews' post-game comments after that disastrous loss, where he inexplicably claimed the process was better and there was good energy? I mean, is this not evidence of a deeply flawed, almost delusional internal culture where the team's leadership is completely disconnected from objective reality? We're talking about a loss where they were, quote, destroyed at every single facet of the game. A coach cannot be held responsible for curing institutional self-deception if the highest paid stars are actively creating a false narrative in the locker room.
I see why you emphasize that quote, but I would argue that disconnected self is the ultimate indictment of the coaching and management structure. If the captain, the face of the franchise, feels compelled to offer such a dismissive defense after utter humiliation, it proves that there is zero accountability being enforced from above. The coaching staff is fundamentally responsible for setting the standard and ensuring that the internal narrative aligns with objective reality. A functional system demands consistency. If the captain can publicly validate a truly terrible performance, the coaching staff has lost control of the locker room standard. The institutional leadership failure is what allowed Matthews to express a viewpoint so detached from the observable reality of the game.
But the coach only controls the bench structure. He doesn't control the contracts or the roster construction. The failure is inherent in the player group that accepts that low standard. They're millionaires who refuse to acknowledge a basic execution failure. And if we accept that the players hold these flawed internal standards, that leads us to question what management is doing externally to reset those expectations. If the problem were truly systemic, the coach, we would expect the general manager, Brad Treliving, to be moving swiftly to change the system, yet his focus seems to be elsewhere.
That is precisely why the current instability confirms the systemic failure. The material notes that the GM is traveling consistently with the team and is frequently shown on camera during games. This visible anxiety, this proximity, it suggests the front office recognizes the severity of the systemic organizational failure. And on top of that, the speculative solution being discussed, a hard reset or selling off UFAs at a lower valuation, that suggests management is already anticipating a need to change the roster, because the current environment, the coaching structure and standard,